This is the Louie T Network. You are now officially in the lab room. It's that time again. It's that time again to go hard in the off season, cause we trying to win. We gon' go so hard, we don't take no days off. Hopefully one day it's all gonna pay off.
Hey, yo. Who else could it be but me, your me, Louie T? Welcome to the 2017 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, where your man Louie T aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2017 NFL Draft using our baseball grading scale, single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts here in the Draft Wrap-Up Series, as we cannot tell how these players are going to pan out, and I don't want to discount any of these young men before they get their chance in the National Football League. And so we'll get a score for each and every single player selected in said team's draft. We'll apply bonuses when necessary, get an aggregate score, divide by the number of picks, which will then yield us an overall grade for that team's draft. We'll then move on to the next team in the series picked by you. That's right. You, the viewer out there, are in total control, as this is the up format. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section of this and future videos in this series stating two things: the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. Couple of examples: Steelers next, Pittsburgh next, Pittsburgh next, Steelers next, Pittsburgh next, Steelers. You get the drift. You get where I'm going with this. You don't want to get too wordy. No need for Pittsburgh Steelers next when you can just put Steelers next. You want to be as efficient with these comments as possible. Like I said, as these videos go up, the comments are coming down within seconds. So you want to be as efficient as possible, direct, straight to the point, and have the requisite comments necessary, words necessary in the comment to get your team up next. You guys have done a phenomenal job, like I've stated before, of doing this thus far. Don't have any complaints. Continue to do what you've done. And because you have continued to do what you've done in the past, the next team up in the series is none other than the Pittsburgh Steelers. And how fitting is it that the Baltimore Ravens were the last team that I did, and the very next team I do is the Pittsburgh Steelers, because they were up next because of you, the viewers out there. And these two teams go hand in hand, it seems like. And this Pittsburgh Steelers team continues to do it the right way. They have a philosophy. They follow it. Their GM, Kevin Colbert, seems to go out and get players that fit the Pittsburgh Steelers mold. Now, they've struggled in the cornerback department to find guys that can A, stay healthy, number one, B, perform for them at a very high level. They're still looking to clean up some things defensively. When James Harrison is back on his 19th Steeler contract, and he's 967 years old, you have a problem at edge rusher. And when you're starting guys at the cornerback position that you had no inkling nor any intentions of starting at the cornerback position, because let's face it, you don't have any other recourse, that's a problem in itself. At least it seems like Artie Burns, your first round pick from last year, may be a guy that you can lean on at the cornerback position. We'll see if you get any other studs out of this draft, but there are one or two questionable decisions in here, but other than that, this is another solid draft put together by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's talk about it. So we start in the first round, 30th overall selection, Wisconsin outside linebacker TJ Watt is the selection, and this is a guy that, for all intents and purposes, is a bloodline pick. Now, this guy can play football. Let's not sit here and act as if because his last name is Watt, he got selected in the first round. That helps, obviously, when your brother is JJ Watt and he's one of the best players in the league. It helps, but they had another brother that was selected as a fullback into the league in like the 6th round. So TJ Watt got selected in the first round because of his ability to play the game of football. Let's talk about him. Size and length are the first pros for me. 6'4", 252 pounds. That's good NFL edge rusher size right there. You know, you hear people talk about, does this guy have enough size to set a physical edge in the run game? You know, and not just necessarily TJ Watt, but in particular when guys are right around 250 pounds. And I always say, look, you know, guys can either set an edge or they can't, you know, and Von Miller's 250. All right. No one's asking, can Von Miller set the edge in the run game? TJ Watt has the size, 33-inch arms, has the length. He has what you're looking for in today's NFL as an outside linebacker in a 2-point stance, setting the edge in the run game. Speaking of which, started the point of attack and has the ability to stack and shed. He does a phenomenal job of using that offensive lineman and then abusing him, getting rid of him and shedding him and getting to the ball carrier. Does a good job of setting a physical edge in the run game as well. Athleticism, it seems like this is what this family seems to generate. Athleticism, big guys that are very athletic in their movement skills, and he falls right in line with the rest of the family. 4'6", 40, 37-inch vert, 10-6 broad, 3-cone, 20 and 60-yard shuttles. All of those numbers and categories that I just gave you were all among the best at the combine at his respective position. So again, you're talking about a very athletically gifted guy that can move around well, not just on the turf in Indy, but on a football field as well. Has a really good closing burst. That's the next pro. This is a guy that, if you don't block him backside, I love watching him on plays that go away from him when he's unblocked as an unblocked defender on the backside of a play. They don't expect him to be able to get in and make a tackle. He does a really good job of not only coming from the backside with a burst of energy and closing speed, but he flattens down that line. He doesn't waste a lot of motion. He's not looping around the line. He's coming around that corner flat at a very flat angle to get to the ball carrier, and it helps him to make plays at the line of scrimmage or even behind the line of scrimmage at times from the backside of a play. So love his closing burst and backside pursuit. I think it is phenomenal. Love watching him come backside, unblocked, come down the line and make plays. Pass rush ability, he has that. That's the next pro. I think it's something that he's going to need to improve upon at the next level, but you don't fall into 11.5 sacks. I've seen guys get 10.5 sacks in the NFL and do it because they abused one particular tackle for 3.5 sacks one week, or the pass coverage is great and the quarterback steps up and he doesn't have anywhere to go with the football, and voila, you find yourself into a sack. That being said, though, it's hard to get 11.5 sacks really your first year doing it. Okay, it's one thing when you've been doing it for years and you find crafty ways to fall into sacks. It's a guy that was his first year starting as an outside linebacker. He gets 11.5 sacks. That's, and again, in the Big Ten, where usually you can count on offensive linemen doing their job and doing it at a relatively high level, that's pretty tough to do, and it must be commended. And I think he's got some ability to rush the passer. I think he does some things really well. I love his push and pull technique. I think that's something that he features and does a really good job of. I actually think he thinks about what he's doing. I think he actually has a rush plan. You don't see that from many college football rushers, especially a guy so young in the game like TJ Watt is, who came to Wisconsin as a tight end and made this positional switch to the defensive side of the football as an outside linebacker. You don't see guys thinking of what they want to do and how to set up a tackle. I actually seen him do a fake spin one time, and I'm like, that's creative. You don't see guys doing that very often, but a fake spin only works if you've already beat a guy with a spin move, which he's not a guy that's going to pull out a spin move, but just I like the way his brain works in terms of looking to get to the quarterback. But he does have some pass rush ability. He has a nice speed to power convert where he just absolutely dump trucks offensive linemen. I watched him take the Carolina Panther tackle that they selected in the second round, Taylor Moton, and just put him up on skates in the bowl game versus Western Michigan, jack him up, knock the football out of the quarterback's hand on just what amounts to a monstrous bull rush. And so he can take speed, transfer that to power. He has a nice pull-push move as well. So he's got some ability and some craftiness when getting to the quarterback. I think he has some ability in coverage as well. Now, I think he's more of a zone defender. I don't think you want him running man-to-man with anybody out of the backfield. But I think in zone coverages, him occupying a space, getting depth in his drop, keying quarterbacks' eyes, and taking guys through his zone and zone matching. I think he does a pretty solid job of doing that in zone coverage. And last but not least, upside and bloodlines. He's got tremendous upside, like I said, and I briefly mentioned this because I really wanted to save this for his cons, but this is a guy with 1 year of experience at Wisconsin playing outside linebacker due to a number of different circumstances and extenuating factors, which we will talk about here in a second. But this is a guy also with bloodlines, okay? Brother J.J. Watt, as we all know, one of the best players in the NFL when healthy. He's got another brother that was drafted, Derek Watt, that was drafted by the San Diego Chargers last year as a fullback. So there are bloodlines running rampant with TJ Watt. And this is a guy that I think the Steelers look at as another guy that's going to come in the Watt lineage and really tear the NFL apart. And he's got all the makings of a guy that can have a very good career in this league. As we move on to his cons, in the first place I start is he's a one-year wonder. This is a guy that came to Wisconsin as a tight end, didn't get on the field initially, sat out, and then he figured, okay, let's make this switch. The coaches looked at him and said, man, you probably make a hell of a defender. Let's make the switch and see if we can't get you on the field. So he does that. In 2014, he tears his right knee up, can't play that season, has to sit out and redshirt. Then 2015, he comes and he's ready to go, tears the other knee up, his right knee. And so not able to really play the way he wanted to. He did play in every single game that season, but he wasn't as effective as he would have liked to have been. Then 2016, fully healthy, gets the opportunity, does not waste that opportunity, goes out and performs at a very high level. And here we are, first round pick, TJ Watt. So 1 year wonder, that lets you know that this guy has talent, but it also is extremely raw football player that we're dealing with here that has a lot to learn, and you're hoping that the coaching staff gets their hands on this kid and molds him into the type of linebacker that I think the Steelers anticipate him becoming for them in the future. Not a dynamic pass rusher, and what I mean by that is he's not explosive. He's not a quick twitch type of guy. He's not going to explode off the line of scrimmage and burst into the backfield like a James Harrison. He's more of a Lamar Woodley type, okay? And I remember breaking down Lamar Woodley. I remember looking at Woodley coming out of Michigan and saying to myself, this guy's not dynamic. He's not going to win consistently at the next level. And that he did for the Pittsburgh Steelers for a number of years. So he reminds me a lot of what Lamar Woodley was, a guy that wins with brute force, a guy that can win with a little bit of quickness, but he's not going to beat you with explosiveness very often. You get a slow-footed tackle that's struggling, yeah, TJ Watt will run right around him. But if this guy in front of him has good feet, can get out of their stance and gain some ground with those first couple of steps, he's going to have to win in some other capacity because he's not an explosive and dynamic edge rusher. And then finally, injury history. Obviously, I made mention of it, but quickly, to 2014, right knee injury, 2015, left knee injury. Again, bounced back in 2016 and had a phenomenal year, which gets him drafted in the first round. You're hoping those injuries are behind him, but they're worth noting. So I think this is one of those guys that you need. I think we think that Bud Dupree has a chance to be a stud. You're hoping that Watt can go to the other side and be a stud. And now all of a sudden you got bookend rush, edge rushers, and you can finally say so long sayonara to James Harrison. And so this is the guy that's going to afford you the opportunity to do that in the first round, 30th overall selection. Wisconsin outside linebacker TJ Watt for me. Is it all? He's hit deep. You can put him on the board. Yes! It's a home run for the Pittsburgh Steelers in the first round as they get a guy that I wasn't as high on at first, but as I watched the tape, I see a guy that's a constant worker, a guy that is going to get better because he is just scratching the surface. I saw some really good things. I saw a guy that was around the football consistently. And I see a guy that has a lot of upside, and I think that's what the Steelers are banking on with TJ Watt moving forward. You move on to their second round pick, and this was a head scratcher for a lot of people, including myself. Now that I look at the pick and I analyze it and I think about it, it makes more and more sense. But again, at the time, I was a little befuddled. Second round, 62nd overall pick, USC wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster. This is a guy that I'm not going to break down because I've already done so in the 2017 NFL Draft Prospects 101 series. So if you're looking for a thorough breakdown of Juju Smith-Schuster and many other prospects that I was able to get to prior to the draft, by all means, please help yourself to the playlist section on the Louie T Network, Draft Prospects 101 series. That's where you'll find a thorough assessment of what Juju Smith-Schuster brings to the table for this Pittsburgh Steelers football team. But nonetheless, I'll give you a quick synopsis of how I felt about the pick when it was made and what I think he brings to the table for this Steelers football team. When I first made the pick, I was befuddled because this was a team that I thought needed help inside linebacker after losing Lawrence Timmons. I felt like that was a position that they needed to attack, and I thought they would attack it early. I thought they may go quarterback. Ben Roethlisberger always hinting every year, oh, I might retire. So you thought that was a position that they may go after. And then obviously the elephant in the room, cornerback. Steelers have been longing for another corner. And so you're thinking this is an opportunity for them to potentially attack the cornerback position, maybe even safety. So you thought there were a number of different directions in which they could go. And they go wide receiver, which you think, well, the Steelers don't really have a problem at receiver. They've got a ton of those guys. Now, are they really good? Are they great compliments to A.B., especially with Big Ten not being able to stay in the lineup due to some issues off the field? Are these guys really great compliments to A.B.? Maybe, maybe not. Sammy Coates, I told you don't ever want to rely on Samuel Coates. If Sammy Coates is the guy you're relying on, you've got problems. So maybe the Steelers felt all along, look, we don't know what we're going to get out of Martavis Bryant. Big Ten can't stay on the field via his marijuana problem, and we don't want to rely on him. We want to have insurance. So I get it. It makes sense. And then even if he's able to stay on the field and he's learned his lesson, now you got a hell of a 3 wide receiver set, maybe the best in the NFL if everyone's on the field and healthy. So even if this guy is able to just be the third option, that's a hell of a third option to have. And he had a lot of slot work at USC, and I thought he was phenomenal in the slot. So it's a really good pickup for the Steelers, because even if Big Ten isn't able to be on his best behavior and he's suspended indefinitely, this guy can move outside if you need him to and be an outside threat for you, and you can move someone else inside to run in the slot. So, and I think you've got a number of options that can take over the slot if this guy were to have to go outside. So this pick makes a lot of sense from a number of different angles, just because it's an insurance policy in case Big Ten can't stay on the field and stay off the weeds. So this pick makes more and more sense to me as I think about it more and more. And I like Juju Smith-Schuster as a second or third option. I don't love him as a first option. Well, guess what? He doesn't have to be a first option in Pittsburgh, which I love this selection even that much more because of where he's going and what he'll be asked to do in the second round. 62nd overall selection, USC wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster for me is a triple. I think he's going to fit into this offense perfectly. At times, teams are going to try to take A.B. away, especially if Big Ten isn't on the field. Now it's going to be that much harder to do that because you've got a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster on the field. If you can get L.G., Ladarius Green, to stay on the field at the tight end position, now you've got weapons galore. Of course, L. Bell in the backfield. And then another guy that we're going to talk about in this draft that you drafted. This offense is really starting to take shape and become a really, which we always thought that this was one of the most dangerous offenses in the league, especially 2 years ago in 2015 when Big Ten was emerging. This offense was so dynamic and explosive. You can get back to that now with a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster being inserted into the lineup. As we go to the third round, 94th pick overall, Tennessee cornerback Cameron Sutton is the selection. 5'11", 188. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but the first pro is good feet and movement skills. The first thing that you see with Cameron Sutton is he has the ability to mirror receivers in front of him, and that's all because his footwork is really good. It's technically sound, does a really good job of waiting out receivers, opening up his hips when that receiver declares where they're going, and his feet are quick enough that even sometimes if he's late in declaring what he wants to do and trying to get into the hip pocket of the receiver, his feet are so quick that he transitions very quickly. A guy that played some basketball back in the day, so you can tell that that's a part of his game. Really, really dynamic and explosive feet that allow him to change directions rapidly so that he doesn't lose ground and is able to stay with receivers. He has some ball skills, 7 career interceptions. There's a play that he makes, and I think this is one of those trap coverages that everyone likes to run, especially in college football, but this is an NFL type of coverage where you're in cover 2 and you're sinking off of that receiver on the outside who's running a speed out or a lot of times a stop or comeback. And then the slot guy is running a corner route, and it's really designed to take advantage of the cover 2 because there's a honey hole behind the corner and the safety shouldn't be able to get over there in time on that corner route. But if you don't put enough air on that football and that cornerback is eyeballing the quarterback and he's able to sink underneath that corner route and that quarterback doesn't see him, you have the makings of an interception. And I saw Cameron Sutton pick one off against Appalachian State. Beautifully done, excellent catch in traffic. Those are the types of plays that he's going to be asked to make in this new kind of cover 2 defense that the Steelers are moving to as they move away from what Dick LeBeau was doing for all those years in Pittsburgh. So I think this is a guy that kind of fits into what they're trying to do. He does a really good job of keying quarterbacks' eyes and making plays. He has a nice rake and swipe technique when he's beaten. There's a play against Virginia Tech, first game of the season at the racetrack, where he's beaten on a double move, and that's something we'll talk about with him a little bit later on. But he bites on a double move by wide receiver Isaiah Ford, who, if I'm not mistaken, was selected by the Miami Dolphins in the 2017 NFL Draft. He gives him an out and up, and he bites down on that out route so viciously that he's beaten by about a full 2, maybe even 3 steps. Football severely underthrown by the Vatech quarterback. Gives him a chance to get back into the play. As he sees Isaiah Ford's hands going up for the football and securing it, he comes in with a vicious swipe at the football, rake of the arm, ball comes out. He saves what would have been a huge play and turns it into an incompletion. And I've seen him do that on a number of occasions where he just has an uncanny knack for swiping down on the arm and the ball with a nice physical hard rake to try to get that football out and force the incompletion. He will give effort in the run game. I don't think he's necessarily a great tackler. We'll talk about that later on. As a matter of fact, I can go on record and tell you he's not a great tackler, but he does give effort. He will come up. He will get involved. And again, that's half the battle when you're talking about cornerbacks in this league. And he's got versatility. This is a guy talked about his feet and how active they are. He's an athlete. And so this is the guy that played the cornerback position, also ran back kicks and punts, 3 career touchdowns on kickoffs and punt returns combined. So you're talking about a guy that can offer you some versatility as a return man if need be for this Pittsburgh Steelers team. So another facet of his game and thing that he brings to the table for this Pittsburgh Steelers team. As we move to his cons, his size is the first thing that you look at. He's 5'11", 188, and I touched on that at the beginning. That's really small size, and in this league where the receivers, as I mentioned all the time, bigger, stronger, faster, 5'11", 188 doesn't sound like a guy that's going to be able to make a living on the outside against some of these bigger receivers. The biggest name in your division that comes to mind is A.J. Green. And again, A.J. Green, 6'3", 215, 5'11", 188 guy. Going to be a pretty tough cover for him. So I think this is a guy that's probably going to be relegated to the slot most likely in Pittsburgh, which they can use help anywhere in the secondary on this defense as we speak. He's a spotty tackler. That's the next con. Like I said, he's a guy that will go and give effort, which I can appreciate. But at the same time, I'd love for you to see what you're hitting. He's one of those guys that just goes in and dives. He'll make some half-hearted attempts. He's a guy that will just go for your legs and go and swipe. He's definitely a leg hunter and looking to shoot your cuffs. He'll miss a ton of times there. He's a guy that will throw the shoulder in there, not wrap up and miss like that. Again, he's 188, so he's not throwing a ton of weight around. I saw him miss a ton of tackles, take some poor, lazy angles sometimes. Not the best tackling corner, but again, he'll give you effort. And again, I'll take that. You can coach a guy up that's willing to go in and tackle. Harder to coach up the guy that doesn't want anything to do with tackling, and that's not Cameron Sutton. And then finally, he struggles with his back to the quarterback a little bit to me. Ran a 4.5 240, which isn't the fastest in the world, but it's not the worst. I think he plays a little bit faster than that 4.5 240 may suggest. But I can tell you this, when he does get beat, he does not look back for the football. He's a guy that will struggle down the field. His eyes will betray him. I told you about the double move versus Virginia Tech when Isaiah Ford gave him the out and up. So he's one of those guys that does a really good job of keying quarterbacks' eyes, but those same eyes can get him into trouble. So he's a guy that when he does lose off the line of scrimmage, when he is beaten, and when a receiver does have a step on him, he's the type of guy that will struggle. A lot of times I don't like the way he's in coverage. What you're trained to do as a corner is if you got a receiver pinned up against the sidelines, you then want to stack that receiver up. You want to be able to turn your hips parallel to the receiver and then eyeball the quarterback, look back for the football, and kind of rail that receiver towards the sideline. Use that sideline as another defender and help aid you. But at the same time, look and locate the ball. He'll actually have his back turned to the quarterback, kind of face guarding the receiver instead of turning this way, looking for the ball and seeing if the quarterback is going to throw it his way. And so to me, he just struggles with his back turned to the quarterback. So there's some technical flaws there, some issues there that I'd like to see him clean up. And again, it's what coaching comes into play. But in the third round, 94th overall selection, Tennessee cornerback Cameron Sutton for me is a double. I think he is a solid cornerback, but there are no traits or redeeming qualities that really stand out for me, okay? I think he does a lot of things good, but nothing great. And so for that, he's a double. As we move on to the third round again, and this is a big pickup for the Steelers and a guy that you just root for, third round, 105th pick overall, Pitt running back James Conner is the selection. We all know about the story about him overcoming cancer and coming back and playing well in 2016 after being diagnosed with cancer in 2015. And it's a feel-good story. But not only is it a feel-good story, but this is a really good football player at a position where the Steelers could use some help. So this is a guy, like I said, everyone's rooting for. And let's talk about what he brings to the table at 6'1", 233 pounds. That's exactly where we're going to start. This is a big guy. Size and strength are not only his first two pros, but that's his game. That's the name of the game for James Conner. He's a big-time bruiser as a running back, which takes me to my next pro, physical downhill runner. And if there was one pro that would describe what this guy is and what his game is made up of, it's that right there, physical downhill runner. That's exactly what he's trying to do. He's trying to get downhill. And once he does, he squares his shoulders, lowers his pads, and drives forward. And if you come with a half-hearted attempt at a tackle, he's going to plow over you and continue to rumble down the field. So this is what this guy does. Speaking of which, takes me right into my next pro, which is a hell of a segue by me. Thank you very much. Yaxter, okay? This is a guy not going to run and juke anybody. He is looking to run through contact. A lot of his yards are after initial contact. And so this is a guy that gets plenty of yards after contact. And again, that's his game. He's going to be the perfect complement to Le'Veon Bell, who's more of a finesse, patient runner, picking his spots. This is a guy that's going to be the direct opposite. Le'Veon Bell will break you off out in space and make you look silly. He's not doing any of that. He's getting downhill in a hurry. Stiff arm. He does have a nice stiff arm. It's not a great stiff arm that's going to allow him to push a guy away and pick up an additional 7 yards, but it is a stiff arm that he's just looking to inflict punishment. The next time you come and try to tackle him, you've got to be wary that he's going to put that stiff arm back in your face, and maybe that allows him to pick up an extra 3 or 4 yards, or maybe that forces you to try to tackle him a different way and you fall off of him. So it's a stiff arm that you have to be wary of because he's just looking to be physical with it. And so it's a stiff arm that I think does provide thought the next time you come to try to bring him down with that defender. So he does have a stiff arm. He's an underrated pass catcher. I think a lot of times with these bigger backs, we don't give them the credit that they deserve for catching the football. I think we did the same thing with Leonard Fournette. And sometimes it's a product of a guy not getting the football in the passing game a ton. So we just assume, oh, he only had 7 catches on the season, so he can't catch. With James Conner, he caught the football a ton. And when you watch him on tape, does he have natural hands? Maybe, maybe not. But I'll tell you this much, I didn't see him drop the rock a lot of times. And when they threw it to him out in space, I saw a guy that was confident in snatching the football and running after the catch. He didn't seem to be thinking about, oh, I got to make sure I catch this football. On the wheel routes up the sideline, on check downs, on swing routes, on screens, I think he's the guy that you can throw the football to and feel very confident that he'll catch it and make something happen afterwards. Has a nose for the end zone. That's the next pro. This is a guy that in 2014, he just busted out over 20 touchdowns rushing. I believe it was like 26 touchdowns in 2014 of some ridiculous number. Of course, you have the season where he injures himself and then the cancer is discovered. And so you go back to him in 2016 and another 16 touchdowns. This guy just has a knack for finding the end zone. He's tough around the goal line. He doesn't mind leaving his feet to leap and get in. He's a guy that in short yardage situations, he's going to get that yard. If it's between him and a linebacker, he's going to win that battle 9 times out of 10. So short yardage situations, goal line situations, this is the guy you want to have the rock. And then he's also solid in pass pro, and that's the final pro. Besides the mental toughness that he exudes just by overcoming cancer to come back and play football, this guy's solid in pass protection because at the next level, he's going to be more of a change of pace back. Of course, Le'Veon Bell, a guy that's going to be your bell cow and tote the rock on most downs for you. But again, Le'Veon Bell has shown the penchant to get injured, whether it's concussions, whether it's knee injuries. We've seen this guy go down in some spots and this offense sputter when he's out. So you're going to need a guy that can do it on all 3 downs, and James Conner can do it on all 3 downs if need be. So love the fact that he can provide for you in pass protection. Now, is he great in pass protection? Does he always know where to go? No, I'm not saying that, but he is willing to stick his nose in the chest of a defender, and now it's up to him and the coaching staff to make sure that he learns where he needs to be looking and where he needs to be in certain blitz pickup situations. But he can get the job done in blitzing situations on 3rd down. So you go from his pros to some of his cons, and the first one, he lacks home run speed with no wiggle whatsoever. He's not making anybody miss. He's not going to elude any defenders out in space. He's either going to run them over or he's going to plow through them and pick up an additional yard or 2 in the process. But this guy isn't hitting too many home runs. He may score from 30 yards out. You block it up and create a little hole for him. He's got enough juice to hit a double and a triple every now and again. But 65-yard touchdowns, probably not going to happen with James Conner. Those won't be reserved for him unless the play is blocked extremely well and he's able to outrun a defender who doesn't have an angle, But if a defender has an angle and they've got the sideline right there, they should be able to get James Conner either down on the ground or out of bounds, which is usually the safer option of the two. But he's not going to hit any home runs for the most part, and he's definitely not going to make anybody miss out in space with a juke move. He needs a running start to be effective. And what I mean by that is Le'Veon Bell is one of those guys that will hesitate behind the line of scrimmage and wait for something to open up. James Conner is not that type of back. You need to create a hole for him. Any kind of diversion in the backfield, any kind of disruption in the backfield where his feet have to come to a stop, he's dead in the water. He's not a start and stop type of guy. He gets the football on a carry. He's looking to go straight forward, plow into that line. If you open up a hole, he'll hit it and he'll get through to the other side. And that's when he's at his best, when he gets a full head of steam. If he, for any reason, has to stop his feet in the backfield, you're probably going to get him bottled up for a loss or get him barely back to the line of scrimmage. That is not his strong suit. He needs a running start to be effective, unlike Le'Veon Bell, who can create when nothing is there. And finally, medical concerns. We know about the cancer. That's always going to be something that he's going to need to be checked on routinely for. We're hoping that that stays away, much like Eric Berry. However, he also tore his knee up in 2015, which is the reason why they were able to detect the cancer in the first place, was because he tore his MCL and missed the entire season with that. And that's when they discovered the cancer. And so that's something else that in the back of your mind, it took him a few, not just the cancer and the rehab and putting the weight back on and all that stuff, but he also needed to get back into form. And you saw that as the season progressed, he got more and more back into shape, back into football shape, and more comfortable with his knee that he had torn up the year prior as well. So those are some concerns medically, but this is a hell of a football player, hell of a story. And like I said, a guy everybody's rooting for. And I think it's a great selection for the Steelers because they needed a guy behind Le'Veon Bell. It was nice to see old man Williams be able to carry the rock and the load at times, but he's old man Williams for a reason. That's not a guy you want to rely on to be your backup running back. And Lord, please forgive us all, but have mercy if we ever have to see the guy who fumbled versus the Broncos in the playoffs a couple of years ago, Fitzgerald Toussaint, in the lineup again, toting the rock for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I hate when people say that's no offense to, or no offense, and then you say something. Normally, if you have to give the disclaimer, no offense, or I don't mean any disrespect, then you're about to disrespect or offend that person. So I'm not even going to say that because I just disrespected Fitzgerald Toussaint. But in any event, in the third round, the 105th pick overall, Pitt running back James Conner for me is a triple. Love this selection by the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he's a great compliment to what Le'Veon Bell is. L.A.B. Bell is the finesse, and this guy's going to be the hammer, and I think it's going to be a good combination for the Pittsburgh Steelers as we move to the fourth round selection. And this is a shout out to my man Cap, who's a huge Steelers fan, huge fan of the show. And we talked before the draft about the Steelers and what they would do at the quarterback position, and he told me from the jump, and I didn't want to hear it, and I didn't believe him. He told me from the jump, hey, we're drafting Joshua Dobbs. And I said, okay, whatever, cool. I hear you. And he kept telling me throughout the process, we're drafting Joshua Dobbs. We're drafting Joshua Dobbs. I'm telling you, we're drafting Joshua Dobbs. And I said, okay, whatever. And in the fourth round, 135th pick overall, Tennessee quarterback Joshua Dobbs was the selection for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So once again, my man Cap was spot on. And he's been right about his Steelers in the past. He told me they were going to lose to the Miami Dolphins. I could sit here and give you a number of things that he's told me that has come to fruition with his team. And this is just another thing in a long list and line of things that he's told me that have come to fruition with his Steelers. And this is a guy that I wasn't a huge fan of going into the process. I watched a ton of Joshua Dobbs at Tennessee. I saw more than enough. I thought I knew what this guy was about, but it's one thing to watch the game, and it's another thing to watch a specific player. And after going back and watching the tape, I must confess, I have a totally different outlook on what Joshua Dobbs could be for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And let's jump into his pros. Good ball velocity. All right. I think he throws a really good, tight, spiraled football that can cut through some of those howling winds in Pittsburgh at Heinz Field. I think he does a really good job of throwing the football. I think he has more than an adequate NFL strong arm. So I think he'll be just fine in the ball velocity department. And that's the first pro. I think he does a better job than people give him credit for of sorting through progressions. I think a lot of times with these read option quarterbacks and these spread quarterbacks more specifically, we just assume they're a one read quarterback. I feel like if you ask me, Joshua Dobbs reads through progressions better than Deshaun Watson, who was selected in the first round by the Houston Texans. The biggest difference between the two quarterbacks is Watson is extremely accurate, way more accurate than Dobbs is underneath. And Deshaun Watson is a winner. Game on the line, Watson gets it done. And game on the line, Dobbs not so much all the time. So that's where the difference is between the two quarterbacks. But I actually think Dobbs reads the field a little bit better and goes through his progressions a little bit better than Watson, who I feel like is a one read, two read max quarterback, and then he wants to get the hell out of the pocket and run and use his athleticism. So I think he'll actually hang in the pocket and make decisions based off of one read, two read, okay, let me check it down to the back, out of the backfield. So I think he will actually sort through progressions. Throws a beautiful deep ball. This is an underrated quality for an NFL quarterback. I feel like the separation between good NFL quarterback, because there are a number of good, solid, you can win with this guy NFL quarterbacks like an Alex Smith. The separation between the good quarterbacks and that next tier, when you start talking about the guys that you feel like are among the best in the league, the Matthew Staffords of the world, those types of guys, when you start getting into that next tier of quarterback, is the ability to hit the deep ball. You can't miss the deep ball at the next level because those opportunities don't come enough. They're few and far between, and when you get an opportunity to hit a quick strike 62-yard touchdown because your receiver has the step on a corner and the safety's too late, you got to hit it. You can't miss those. And so Joshua Dobbs, for all of his faults and all of the inaccuracies that you will get with him, boy, does he throw a beautiful deep ball. He doesn't miss those very often. And it's part of the reason why Josh Malone was drafted so high in the draft and has an opportunity to make an impact on another Tennessee draftee in this year's draft, because he hit a lot of deep balls to Josh Malone. Malone got behind defenses, and Dobbs did not miss him very often. Throws a gorgeous deep ball with enough air for the receiver to run under and make a play afterwards. Good athleticism. We know about the athlete, and I think this is another underrated quality because, you know, you go to the NFL and everyone wants to talk about how good guys are in the pocket. If you can move as a quarterback, Tyrod Taylor to me is underrated in this league. Cam Newton is one of the better quarterbacks in this league. These are guys that can move. These are dual threat quarterbacks that can hurt you with their legs. Marcus Mariota, emerging quarterback, a guy that can move, that can hurt you with his legs. These are commodities that we don't talk about enough because we consider those college attributes. But I'm telling you right now, Dak Prescott, another guy that can move, that can run, that can hurt you with his legs. His athleticism is very underrated, okay? His 4.64 40 looks a lot faster on game day. And I think he's got wiggle. Deshaun Watson runs a similar 40, but to me, he doesn't have a ton of wiggle. He's not going to make anybody really miss out in space. Joshua Dobbs is running over guys. Joshua Dobbs is running around guys. Joshua Dobbs is running past guys, okay? He's faster than, and he's got these longer strides. He's faster than people give him credit for. His vert, his broad, his 3-cone, and his 40, all among the best at his position at the combine. Not really saying much. It's a quarterback position, but his athleticism to me, I think, is a big key and a strength for him at the next level. Big time production in the SEC. I can't state this enough. You play in the SEC, it's a different animal. I bring this up a lot because I feel like A lot of people don't really understand the difference between the Pac-12 or the ACC or the AAC and the SEC. If you watch college football, then you know exactly what I'm referencing. But if you don't, there's a stark drop-off from the SEC and every other conference. Now, athletically, there are other conferences that are on par. But if you're talking about the quality of football player, the SEC provides that, especially on the defensive side of the football, more so than any other conference in football. And you're going up against the likes of Alabama and Florida and these teams that we see, South Carolina, these teams that we see churning out all of this talent to the NFL on the defensive side of the football year in and year out. It is tough to go up against those types of teams, Georgia, week in and week out, and to be able to do what he did. He's part of the 50-30 club in the SEC conference. Only 4 quarterbacks belong to that club in the SEC. Tim Tebow, Dak Prescott, Johnny Manziel, and now Joshua Dobbs. 50 passing touchdowns, 30 rush touchdowns. Hard to do in a conference like the SEC, but that's what Joshua Dobbs did. And so, again, you come to respect what he was able to accomplish in a tough SEC conference. Kudos to Joshua Dobbs. And finally, mental capacity. I think that this is a guy that has mental toughness. Look, we know about how smart and intelligent this guy is. He's literally a rocket scientist. You always hear, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You always hear that expression. No, this guy's literally a rocket scientist. He literally helps put planes together, come up with ideas for the design of planes, okay? This guy is actually an engineer. So, yes, we're talking about a literal rocket scientist. So the guy intellectually, we know he can get it. You know, when we talk about these quarterbacks, well, will he adjust to the next level because he was in a spread offense and they didn't have to read the field and they were cutting the field in half? We know this guy's mental capacity is able to make the transition and pick up whatever it is you're trying to explain to him. So that's not something we worry about. But it's mental toughness. There are some hardships that he went through at Tennessee, losing a quarterback battle, having to overcome some things while at Tennessee in terms of losing some close ball games and not having the best team around him at all times. Tennessee, a lot of people forget Tennessee was down for a little while in the SEC, and now they're starting to come back up, and Dobbs is a huge part of resurrecting that program. So you got to give credit where credit is due, and I think Joshua Dobbs, especially myself, I didn't give him a ton of credit until I was able to go back and really assess what this guy was able to accomplish at his time at Knoxville. As we go to his cons, consistency. He struggles with it. Footwork, accuracy. And footwork and accuracy are tied at the hip. Your footwork is sloppy, your accuracy is going to be sloppy. And I think that's something that he's going to have to consistently work at to be better, is because I think he has all of the makings of a quarterback that can be successful. We saw this with Dak Prescott. I think the comparisons are so comparable to him and Dak Prescott. They both played in the SEC. They both played at a high level. I just told you they were both a part of the 50-30 club in the SEC. They both played in similar offenses. We both said they need time to develop. They're not ready to make the transition, yada, yada, yada. They're both athletically gifted. They can both throw the football well. But more importantly, they're guys that I feel like if put into the right situation, they can excel. We saw where Dak Prescott landed last year and how that was a good situation for him and how he excelled. We didn't expect him to have to play in his rookie season, but he did. He was a 4th-round pick. He was the 135th pick overall taken by the Dallas Cowboys. Joshua Dobbs was taken in the 4th round, 135th pick overall by the Pittsburgh Steelers. The similarities are eerie. They're scary. This is a guy that I think if he can work on his consistency, the footwork, which will help with the accuracy. He's got the athleticism, the mental capacity, the arm strength. He's got everything you need to be not just a quality backup is the first thing they're looking for right now. but maybe the guy that can take over the throne when Ben Roethlisberger is no longer able or willing to do it. And finally, decision-making and size are the final two cons. He's got to make better decisions with the football. There are times where I think before the snap, he predetermines based off of coverage where he's going with the football. And sometimes he just forces it and makes mistakes. There are times where you say, okay, you can't go there with the football. The biggest example I have of that, he brings his team all the way back against Texas A&M in College Station. They were down big, 28-7 in that ball game. He brings them all the way back. They tie the game. They go to overtime. They're in the second overtime period. They got to score a touchdown to keep the game tied and move it to a third overtime. On the first down of the second overtime, he throws an interception, forcing the football over the middle of the field to the tight end. That play wasn't there. That wasn't where he needed to go with the football. Overthrows the tight end right to the safety. Game over. Texas A&M holds on for the victory. So again, sometimes he predetermines where he's going with the football pre-snap. He's going to have to work on that. Make better decisions, more sound decisions, take care of the football. And his size. This is a guy that's 6'3", 216. He's a little slender. I think he's going to have to fill out his frame a little bit more, especially if he's going to run around and try to make plays. It's a physical league. Ask Ben Roethlisberger just how physical and physically demanding the quarterback position can be. So he's going to need to put on a little bit of weight. I don't know how much more he can put on his frame, but I'd like to see him get up over 220 pounds. But we'll see what happens. He got bigger and bigger as he progressed in his Tennessee career. We'll see if he can put on a few more pounds and not be as slender at the quarterback position. But in any event, I've been totally sold on Joshua Dobbs and what he brings to the table. In the fourth round, 135th pick overall, Tennessee quarterback Joshua Dobbs for me is a triple. I think this guy has the potential, and I said the same thing about Dak Prescott last year. He was a triple for the Cowboys. I feel the same way about Joshua Dobbs. I don't expect him to have to play, but every year Ben Roethlisberger misses games, and someone's going to have to step in. Why not Joshua Dobbs? So you go to the fifth round, 173rd pick overall, Utah defensive back Brian Allen is the selection. Height, weight, speed specimen, 4'4", 840, at 6'3", 215. If that's not height, weight, speed specimen at the cornerback position, then I don't know what is. I saw him at the combine. I was blown away by his athleticism and his size, but there's a backstory to this guy. We're going to get to it. He's got extreme length. To go with that 6'3" frame, 215 pounds, running at 4'4", this guy's got 34-inch arms, so even when he's beat, he's not really beaten if that receiver doesn't have a full 2 steps on him. If he's just got a step on him, that length is going to kick into gear and going to give him an opportunity to recover. It's what saved Nnamdi Asomugha for years. It's what continues to save Richard Sherman when he's beat, the ability to have length and get back into the play. Nice jam at the line of scrimmage. I saw him absolutely body a receiver against, I want to say it was either UCLA or I was watching him, and it was against Washington. And the receiver tries to get off the line of scrimmage, and he absolutely bodies this receiver. Takes him out of the picture, knocks him out of bounds. Like, God damn, he's got a hell of a jam when he wants to jam. He can come up and be aggressive. He'll do it from time to time. So that's something that I think he could use to his advantage. Pick your spots, know who you're coming up against and who you can get away with that against. But I think that's something that can help him in his development moving forward. A good long distance speed and recovery. Again, when you got 4'8", 40 speed at 6'3", normally it's build up speed. And when you got 34-inch arms, you're never out of a play. And so he's got the ability to make up. I saw a play against UCLA. He had 2 picks in this particular game, and one he was beat down the sideline, and it was underthrown by the quarterback. But he was right there, and he had some length, and he was able to locate ball, pick it off, which takes me to my final pro, or one of my final pros with him, ball skills. Had 4 interceptions in 2016. He's an ex-wide receiver, so he can catch the football. All right. Has soft hands, can make plays on the ball. So there are ball skills there. And then he's got upside. This is a guy that Didn't come to Utah as a DB, came as a wide receiver, and I'm gonna explain this here in a second. But there's a lot of upside to Brian Allen. He's got a long way to go as a cornerback, a long way to go. But you can look at it one or two ways. You're gonna say he's extremely raw, or you can say he's got upside. The Steelers are banking on the fact that this guy has upside. 6'3", 215, can't teach that. That runs a 4.48, can't teach that. That has 34-inch arms, can't teach that. They got all the makings of an NFL corner in front of them. It's their job to turn him into a viable candidate to be an NFL corner at the next level. As we go to his cons, he is as raw as the day is long. He's as raw as he can be. 1 year of starting experience at Utah. And he didn't even start the entire season. I watched him against Washington, and I watched this game, and he literally was subbed in and out of the lineup every other possession. So he didn't start the game against Washington, but he was in on the second possession. He wasn't in on the third possession, but he was in on the fourth possession. And that just speaks to the lack of trust that the coaching staff has in him to just be on the field on every single possession. If you're a good football player and we trust you, you're on the field every possession. You're not coming off. They didn't have that trust in Brian Allen because he hasn't really started and didn't have that experience, and they want to just leave him out there and continuously be out to hung to dry. So he's a guy that they didn't even trust to be out on the field on a game-to-game basis the entire game. So this guy's extremely raw, came to Utah as a receiver, and I got to tell you, the next con is very disheartening. He's a non-factor in the run game. Now, when I say non-factor, I mean this guy is a no-show. And he actually told a reporter that he didn't know how to tackle for a couple of years as a cornerback because he came to Utah as a receiver. He never had to tackle in high school. This was not his sport of choice initially. He was a basketball guy. So he didn't know anything about tackling. And you can tell he wants no part of tackling anybody. He's away from the action. He wants no part of tackling. If they can handle it, he'll let them handle it. He'll go in there every now and again just to be able to save face and say, hey, I'm helping you guys. He'll jump in there. But for the most part, he wants nothing to do with tackling. And you can tell, and that's a shame because he's 6'3", 215. You should be able to say, if this guy can't play corner, we should be able to move him to safety. But you can't even say that because he is a non-factor in the run game. And his transition is slow as the final con. When he's going to turn his hips, boy, is it slow. I watched him against UCLA. He had 2 picks in that game, mind you. But he's off coverage. He allows the receiver to come, eat up his cushion, step on his toes, runs a post route. He's right there. He's transitioned from back pedal to turn was so slow that post beat him inside. He then tries the worst half-hearted attempt at a tackle / strip, which was just garbage. The receiver runs away from him and then runs away from the safety and scores a touchdown on what should have either been an incompletion or at worst a 15-yard gain. It turned into a 60-yard touchdown. And so, again, this guy can't tackle. His transition is slow. He needs work is what he needs. And so this is a project here. This is a project if I've ever seen one. But the height, the weight, the speed, the length, those are things that you don't give up on right away. And so in the 5th round, 173rd pick overall, Utah defensive back Brian Allen for me is a double. He's not ready. He's not ready, and he's not going to be ready. But this is the type of guy you want to work with because the payoff could be huge. If he doesn't work out, he's just another guy that didn't work out in the 5th round. But if he works out, the payoff here could be monumental for a guy his size with his skill set. As we move on to the 6th round, 213th overall pick, Louisville long snapper Colin Hulba is the selection. Of course, he's a long snapper. I'm not going to break him down. This is the other head-scratching pick that the Steelers made. Now, I actually read an article from the GM of the Steelers, Kevin Colbert, that basically explained this selection because you got to explain picks like this. You draft a long snapper, you got to explain your damn self. So his thought process here in selecting Colin Hulba was, look, In college football, long snappers are generally walk-ons. They don't get scholarships. They're small guys. They're 6'1". They're 212 pounds. There are rules in college football to protect them. So you don't have to go out and spend a scholarship on a long snapper. You just find a guy that can snap the football. Doesn't have to be the biggest guy in the world because, again, there are rules to protect the long snapper in college football. That's not the case in the NFL. So you're looking for guys with requisite size to get the job done. And yeah, they got Greg Warren, who's 36 years old, and he's a veteran, and he's on another one-year deal in Pittsburgh. So he's like, hey, I found a guy in college football that's the requisite size, 6'4", 248. They don't grow on trees in college football because, again, most of these guys are walk-ons. And so I've identified a guy that I think could be our long snapper of the future. Greg Warren's getting up there in age. Hey, why not draft this guy and get him before somebody else does? He said, look, the Patriots did it 2 years ago. And that's everybody's rationale when you do something that isn't respected or highly regarded around league circles. You always go to the Patriots because they're the most successful outfit out there. You go, hey, look, the Patriots did it 2 years ago with Joe Cardona out of Navy, and he's their long snapper now, and nobody said anything to them. So get off my back was the way he pretty much ended that whole article. And look, I'm not going to judge you. I'm just going to tell you that in the 6th round, 213th overall pick, Louisville long snapper Colin Hauble for me is a single. He's a long snapper, okay? Find a long snapper somewhere and keep it moving. Don't spend a 6th round pick on him. But again, I'm not here to tell you who to spend your draft picks on. If you identify a long snapper, and look, we never talk about long snappers until you don't have a long snapper. Go and get your long snapper, man. I'm not going to beat you up. I'm just going to give you a single and move on. So 7th round, 248th overall selection, Western Michigan outside linebacker, Keon Adams is the selection. This is an intriguing pick for the same reason that TJ Watt was an intriguing pick. You need edge rushers in Pittsburgh, and this is a guy that I think may have a chance to not only latch on to your roster, but actually have an impact, even in his rookie season if he's able to make the roster, but down the road if he's able to perform the way that I think he may be capable of. Let's talk about him. Athleticism is his first pro. 4'6", 840, quick feet. He's got really quick feet, bouncy feet. You see this guy moving around. He can knife into the backfield very quickly, which leads me to my next pro. Can be a disruptive penetrator. This is the type of guy that I watched him eat up smaller competition, Middle Tennessee State, and all of these guys that are in the MAC conference, Central Michigan. I'm seeing him just devour Toledo and eating these teams up. And then I watched him against Wisconsin. I'm going to talk about the results of that a little bit later on. But he was destroying these teams. Closing burst. And same thing with TJ Watt. You don't block this guy on the backside. You're asking for trouble. He's coming off the backside and he's going to make a play. Really good rip, dip, and shorten the edge ability. So he's got the ability to rip, dip, and beat guys around the corner, shorten that edge, get to the quarterback. I watched him against Toledo, and they had a 6'8" left tackle, which, you know, it's tough for a 6'8" guy to bend. So Keon Adams went right to work, beat him around the edge, dipped that shoulder, bent that corner, flattened that edge, shortened the edge, got to the quarterback. And he can do that from time to time. Now, again, I don't think he's necessarily that explosive to be able to do that at the next level. That 6'8" guy looked like he was kind of finding it hard to get out of his stance, and Keon Adams was able to beat him off the line of scrimmage. But he's got the ability to do that. We'll see if he's able to do that at the next level. Also, a beautiful counter spin and crossover move. So he's going to try to beat you with speed initially, but after he gets you thinking speed, he can come with a beautiful spin. Now that spin, that counter spin, where he goes up the field initially and then spins because the speed isn't working right off the bat. Man, is that thing beautiful or what? The 2 times I saw him do it, it worked both times. I'd love to see him do it some more. Man, was that thing effective or what? So that's in the arsenal. And then I watched him cross up a tackle on a play where he goes outside, and he's a basketball guy. So he goes outside, crosses him up, goes inside hard. So hard outside, back inside with the crossover. Boy, he won to the inside. He smashed that quarterback. They were playing Georgia Southern. He smashes the quarterback as he's throwing the football, results in an interception. Man, was that a thing of beauty. So he's got some movements to him that I think could easily yield him making this Steelers roster as a 7th round selection. He's got pass rush potential. That's the final pro. Is that I told you about the crossover. I told you about the spin move. He can get up the field with a rip and a dip. I think this guy's got what it takes to be on an NFL roster and help in some capacity. I'm not sold that he's not going to be good enough to make this Steelers roster. I think this is one of those 7th round gems that you may have unearthed. In the 7th round here with Keon Adams. I like what I saw out of him. Let's get to his cons, however. He's undersized in the run game. And I remember I talked about that Wisconsin game. I saw him dominating Georgia Southern and Toledo and Central Michigan and all of these teams in the MAC conference. And then I asked him to go do that against a superior opponent in Wisconsin. And I watched Ryan Ramczyk just drive this guy out of the play. I watched the Wisconsin offensive line just annihilate this guy and make him a non-factor. And so he's undersized in the run game, for sure. He tends to jump around and work around blocks, which opens up rush lanes. So he's one of those guys that he loves to jump around the block and then try to go flatten and make a play, which works if you're athletic enough and the guy that's blocking you isn't, to rebound and push you out of the way. But what happens when that tackle is a 1st round pick and his name is Ryan Ramczyk, and you try to jump around him? All he does is scoop you and push you out of the way. And now you take that gap, that C gap, and you turn it into a C explosion. It's a huge hole, and anybody could walk up it. And Corey Clement was just having a field day running right behind his left tackle and right tackle when Keon Adams would try it on the right side of the line. So he's got to do a better job of just either taking on a block or just saying, you know what, I may not win, but I'm not going to run out of the way and make it easy for you to just seal me out of the play. And finally, he's going to have to diversify his rush. I want to see him use the spin move more. I want to see him use the crossover more. I want to see him use his hands more. I want to see him be more dynamic because I think he's got the ability to do so. All right. And I want to see him make that transition because that Wisconsin game showed me that he looked good against lesser competition. And when he stepped up in level of competition, I didn't think he was all that great. So we'll see. But in the 7th round, 248th pick overall, Western Michigan outside linebacker Keon Adams for me is a double, man. I'm intrigued by this guy, and I'm going to be watching to see if he can make this Steelers roster because I think there's a roster spot with his name on it if he can stay healthy and perform in training camp. So that's the Steelers draft in a nutshell. I thought it was a phenomenal draft by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's quickly go through what they were able to do and tally up their points. So you get a home run in the 1st round with T.J. Watt. You then follow that up with a triple with Juju Smith-Schuster. You have 2 more triples in the draft in James Conner and Joshua Dobbs. Then you have 3 doubles in the draft, Cameron Sutton, Brian Allen, and Keon Adams. And then you have 1 single in Colin Hulba, the long snapper out of Louisville. You tally all of that up. You get a triples bonus and a doubles bonus, which nets you a 25 overall. You divide by the number of picks, 8 made by the Steelers in this draft. And it's a 3.12 triple for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think this is a really quality haul. And I think guys that are going to have an impact year number 1, including a guy like Joshua Dobbs that may have to play. We know Ben goes down every year at some point for at least a 3 to 4 week stretch. Wouldn't be shocked if Joshua Dobbs even sees the field in year number 1. That's going to do it for the Pittsburgh Steelers in their 2017 NFL Draft wrap-up. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here on the Louie T Network. Come back and join me as I continue to break down anything and everything in the National Football League. You know I got one question for you. Who's next?